All right, so we've got this mountain of research on America's labor shortage. Everyone's talking about it, but I have a feeling the data is going to reveal some stuff most folks aren't expecting.
Yeah, it's definitely way more complicated than just, a bunch of people deciding to quit their jobs.
Right. So the Great Resignation, like we've all heard a million times, but what's really going on?
It's less about resignation and more of like a giant reshuffling, like picture musical chairs, but on a national scale.
Okay, I like that.
People aren't just leaving the workforce; they're looking for better jobs, better work-life balance, a company culture they can get behind, and yeah, obviously the money matters too. Seems like the pandemic kind of changed what people really want out of a job, you know?
Totally. And the numbers show that too, right? Wasn't there a huge wave of people quitting back in 2021 and 2022?
Oh yeah, definitely. Over 50 million people quit in 2022, and that was on top of like 47.8 million in 2021. But here's the catch. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is saying hiring rates are actually higher than quit rates.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of movement, a lot of people switching jobs, but it's not just a simple, nobody wants to work anymore situation.
So is this reshuffle hitting every industry the same? All my friends who work at restaurants keep saying they can't find anyone to hire.
Food service and hospitality, those are definitely taking a hit. Since July of 2022, they've had quit rates over 4% consistently.
Wow, so even with all those help wanted signs everywhere, they're still losing employees faster than they can hire.
Pretty much. Just in January 2024, they lost, let me see, almost 800,000 workers. But here's the thing, they hired over a million.
Whoa, that's a lot of turnover.
Yeah, which means there's some bigger issues in those industries. It's not just about filling spots, it's about keeping the people they hire.
Makes you wonder why people are leaving so much, right? Is it all about pay, or is there something else going on?
That's a good question. Research suggests it's a lot of things mixed together and probably depends on the person too. Tough working conditions, you know, crazy schedules, not enough benefits, all that kind of stuff makes for a job people don't want to stick with.
So where are all the job openings? It feels like every business has a now hiring sign up.
Professional and business services and education and health services, those are the ones with the most open jobs.
Those are the ones having the hardest time finding people, though.
Seems like it, but remember, professional and business services, that's a huge category. It's not just fancy offices. It's uh, landscapers, waste management, all sorts of
Right,
things.
right. It's not all white collar job.
Exactly. And even within those sectors, the reasons for the shortage are all over the place. Sometimes there's not enough people with the right skills. Sometimes it's competition from other industries. Sometimes it's geography. Like the workers are there, but not where the jobs are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any industries that aren't struggling so much? Like where are things a bit more stable?
Finance and manufacturing, they're seeing fewer people quit, so that might mean things are more stable there.
Interesting. Maybe because those jobs pay better and have better benefits.
Could be. The data doesn't directly say that, but it makes sense, right? People tend to stick around when they feel valued and get paid fairly.
So even with everyone switching jobs, some sectors are better at holding on to their employees. But what about the overall number of people working? Are there even enough people out there to fill all these open jobs?
That's the real question. More people are joining the workforce, but we're still not at pre-pandemic levels. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says if we were, we'd have 2 million more workers.
2 million. Wow. So even with everyone switching jobs, we're still missing a ton of potential workers.
Exactly. And that shortage is hitting pretty much every industry in almost every state. It's a nationwide thing, which obviously has big consequences.
Okay, so there's this huge shortage impacting most industries. But you mentioned there were some surprises in the data. What else did you find?
Well, look at manufacturing. They got hit hard at the beginning of the pandemic, lost a crazy number of jobs, like 1.4 million. And while it's been recovering, they still can't find enough people. As of January 2024, there were 622,000 unfilled manufacturing jobs.
So even with the comeback, they're still struggling with this shortage. But here's something that really surprised me. The construction industry has too many workers right now. What's up with that?
Yeah, that's one of those things that makes you think. Having extra workers in one area doesn't mean the overall shortage isn't real. Location matters a lot. There might be more unemployed construction workers than jobs in some places, but that doesn't mean those workers can just pick up and move.
Right, it's not just about numbers, it's about having the right people in the right places with the right skills.
You got it. And also, the surplus might not last. Construction goes up and down, so this could change as the economy changes.
Okay, so we've got high quit rates in some places, not enough workers overall, but too many in construction. Are companies even managing to hire anyone with all this going on?
They are, but the hiring rates are all over the place depending on the industry.
Some doing better than others.
Exactly. Like mining and logging, they hired the fewest people in 2023, only about 286,000.
Wow, that's nothing compared to leisure and hospitality. They hired over 13 million in 2023.
See? And it's not just them. Professional and business services hired about the same. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. Some industries struggling to hire, others bringing in tons of new people.
Okay, so high quit rates, lots of hiring, not enough workers in some places, too many in others. What about unemployment? I thought that was down.
It is. The national rate is at 3.9%, which is good. That's about 6.5 million unemployed people.
Hold on. If there are millions of unemployed people and millions of open jobs, why is there still a shortage?
That's where it gets tricky. It's not just about filling spots. It's about the right skills, the right location, all these things specific to each industry. Sometimes the unemployed people don't have the skills those open jobs need, or the jobs are in places where there just aren't enough qualified people.
It's like a supply and demand mismatch, but way more complicated than just, jobs and workers.
Exactly. And then you add in remote work. That's a whole other layer of
Oh,
complexity.
yeah, remote work. That's been huge since the pandemic.
Yeah.
What does the research say about that?
Well, actually, it's gone down quite a bit since its peak in 2021.
Really? I thought it was here to stay.
It is kinda. It's just not as widespread as it was during the worst of the pandemic. Only about 25% of employees are working remotely part-time now.
So it's leveled off, but it's still way more than before the pandemic. I guess it's part of the new normal, but not for everyone.
Right. And whether you can work remotely really depends on what you do.
Okay, let's break that down. Which jobs are staying remote and which ones need people to, actually be there?
Some jobs, you just can't do them remotely, no matter how good the technology gets, like hospitality, transportation, retail. Almost 80% of people in those jobs are fully on site.
Makes sense. Can't serve a meal or drive a bus from home. So the jobs that are staying remote are the ones we think of as office jobs.
Yeah, for the most part. Industries with less physical labor and more digital stuff, they're more likely to have remote workers. Think IT, finance, that kind of thing. In those sectors, less than 30% of employees are fully on site.
So remote work is changing things, but it's not a solution for every job. Really depends on what the work is.
Absolutely. And that variation just adds to, how complicated this whole labor shortage situation is.
Okay, so we've got these high quit rates, lots of hiring, not enough workers in some areas, too many in others, and people still unemployed. It's a lot to take in. What stood out to you most from all this research?
What's really interesting is this huge reshuffling happening at the same time as a worker shortage. It's not just filling empty spots. It's about keeping up with what workers want now and how work is changing.
So it's less about not having enough workers
Yeah.
and more about what employers offer, not matching what workers want.
You got it. And that's something businesses need to understand if they want to attract and keep good employees.
All right, so we've laid out how complicated this labor shortage is, but what are businesses actually doing about it? You mentioned the U.S. Chamber of Commerce had some ideas, right?
They do. And what's cool is they're suggesting going beyond the usual ways of hiring. It's not just about posting a job and hoping for the best anymore.
Sounds like companies are realizing they got to get creative.
Yeah, exactly. While we're going through all these solutions, we should keep in mind that behind all these numbers are real people. Their lives are being affected by all of this.
That's a good point. Can't forget about the human side of things. What's it like for workers in this labor shortage?
For people quitting to find something better, it's a mix of being nervous but excited. They're taking a risk, trying something new, and betting on themselves. Like, I guess it shows they feel empowered, right?
It does seem like the balance of power is shifting. Workers are realizing they have choices and they don't have to settle.
Exactly. And their priorities are different too. The pandemic made a lot of people rethink what's really important to them: work-life balance, mental health, feeling like their work has a purpose. Those things they're coming first now.
It's like everyone woke up at the same time and realized, hey, my time and my well-being are valuable. I'm not going to waste them on a job that doesn't care.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And that's pushing businesses to create better, more fulfilling workplaces. They're realizing that to get and keep good employees, they need to offer more than just a good salary.
So this labor shortage is changing workplace culture. But what about the people who aren't quitting? How's all this affecting them?
They have their own problems. With companies struggling to fill jobs, the people who stay end up with way more work.
Burnout has got to be a big worry, especially in jobs that are already tough.
Oh, for sure. And it's not just the amount of work, it's the pressure to constantly adapt and learn new stuff as technology changes and jobs change too. Things are changing so fast, workers need to keep learning or they'll get left behind.
Sounds stressful.
Hmm.
So what can workers do to keep up and, do well in this environment?
Learning new skills and retraining are key. Investing in employees is super important now. Workers get new skills and knowledge, and businesses can fill important roles from within.
Sounds like everyone wins,
Mhm.
but it takes commitment from both sides, right?
Definitely. Workers have to be proactive, look for opportunities to learn and grow, and businesses need to provide the resources and support to make it happen.
So it's a team effort. Workers can't just expect their bosses to hand them everything. They got to take charge of their own careers.
Exactly. It's about being proactive and realizing that learning new stuff isn't just a good idea anymore. It's necessary.
Okay, we talked about what it's like for people quitting, people staying, and how important it is to learn new skills. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. How's this labor shortage affecting the economy as a whole?
This labor shortage is tied to other economic trends, like inflation. When there aren't enough workers, wages go up, and companies raise prices to cover those costs. And we all end up paying more.
Yeah, we're all seeing that at the grocery store and the gas pump.
Exactly. The labor shortage is messing with supply chains, too. When companies can't find enough workers to make and ship stuff, there are delays and shortages, and that drives prices up even more.
Sounds like a vicious cycle. Shortage affects wages and supply chains, which fuels inflation, which makes it even harder to find and keep workers.
You got it. It's a delicate balance, and
Right.
when one thing goes wrong, it messes up everything else.
So what's the future of work going to look like? What trends should we be paying attention to with this labor shortage still going on?
Automation and artificial intelligence are definitely going to keep getting bigger. As technology gets better, some jobs will disappear and new ones will pop up.
So robots are going to take over our jobs.
It's more complicated than that. While some jobs will be automated, it's really about using technology to help people do their jobs better and faster.
So it's more like people and machines working together.
Exactly. And that lets people focus on things that machines can't do. Things that need creativity, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. The things that make us human.
So those are the skills that will be valuable in the future.
Absolutely. We got to be adaptable, resilient, and always learning new stuff to stay ahead of the game.
It's like everyone's a student now, whether we want to be or not.
That's a good way to think about it. Lifelong learning isn't a choice anymore. It's a must.
Okay, we got to be learning new skills, using technology, and developing those human skills. But as we move into this future of work, what about the downsides? What should we be worried about?
One big worry is that automation could make income inequality worse.
I can see that happening.
Yeah.
If machines take over jobs that used to be done by people without a lot of skills, those people might have trouble finding new jobs in a more automated economy.
Right. And if those new jobs need more education and training, everyone needs to be able to get that. Otherwise, the gap between the rich and the poor is just going to get bigger.
So it's not just about technology getting better. It's about making sure everyone benefits from it, not just a few lucky people.
You got it. We need to think about the ethics of these changes and create a future of work that's fair and sustainable for everyone.
Well said. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We talked about how complicated the labor shortage is, what it means for workers and businesses, and how work itself is changing.
It's been a great discussion, and I'm sure there's even more to talk about.
Definitely. The world of work is constantly evolving, and we'll keep looking into these trends and sharing what we find.
But before we move on to the Chamber of Commerce's solutions, I think it's worth thinking about things from the worker's point of view for a second.
Good point. We've been focusing a lot on the employer side of things. What advice would you give to someone trying to navigate this labor shortage? What can they do to set themselves up for success?
First, I'd say be open to new things. Be willing to learn and adapt, and don't be scared to try something different.
So being proactive and taking control of your career path.
Exactly. And invest in yourself. Figure out what skills are in demand and find ways to learn them, whether it's online courses, boot camps, or on-the-job training.
Any other advice?
Don't underestimate networking. Connect with people in your field, go to industry events, build relationships that could lead to opportunities.
Build a good support system and learn from other people's experiences. What else?
Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. Know what you're worth, negotiate your salary, and don't settle for less.
Confidence and knowing yourself are key. You need to know your strengths and show them off to potential employers.
Absolutely. And be clear about your goals and what you want to achieve. What kind of work do you want to do? What impact do you want to make? Having a vision can help you navigate the job market and make smart choices about your career.
So with this labor shortage and all the changes happening with technology, workers have to be proactive, adaptable, and always learning. They need to build their networks and stand up for themselves. They have more power to shape their careers than they might think.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This isn't the time to sit back and wait. It's time to take action and build the future of work we want. And on that note, let's dive into what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has to say. They've got some practical ideas for how businesses can adjust and do well in this new world of work.
So we talked about what workers can do, but what about the businesses? How are they adapting to attract talent? You mentioned the U.S. Chamber of Commerce had some suggestions.
They do, and it's interesting. A lot of what they're saying is about going beyond the old ways of recruiting. It's not enough to just post a job and wait anymore.
Companies realizing they got to up their game, huh?
Yeah. One big thing they suggest is making childcare more accessible. If it's easier for working parents to find good, affordable childcare, more people could come back to work.
That makes sense. Childcare costs are a huge burden for a lot of families, and often it's what keeps usually the mom from working.
Right. It's not just about filling empty jobs. It's about getting people who are stuck at home because of these bigger issues back into the workforce.
So fixing those issues could be a big part of solving this labor shortage.
It seems like it. The Chamber of Commerce also says businesses should offer more creative benefits to attract and keep employees, like flexible schedules, mental health support, better parental leave, basically recognizing that people have lives outside of work and supporting them.
I've even heard of companies offering help with student loans, pet insurance, even paying for gym memberships. It's like they're finally getting that employees are people with, different needs.
It's a different way of thinking, and some companies are taking it even further with these second chance hiring programs. They're giving jobs to people with criminal records.
That's awesome. It's giving people a chance to turn things around and contribute. I love that this shortage is making businesses think outside the box and consider all kinds of potential employees.
Me too. And the chamber also talks about upskilling and reskilling, something we mentioned before, investing in employees, helping them learn what they need to stay relevant as jobs change.
It's like companies are realizing that investing in their people isn't just a nice thing to do. It's essential for their business. Employees who are happy, well-trained, and supported are more productive and engaged, and they're less likely to jump ship.
Exactly. It's about building a culture of, continuous learning and growth where employees feel valued and have the power to improve themselves.
It's really interesting to see how this labor shortage is changing how companies think about attracting and keeping talent.
Hmm.
They have to be more creative, more flexible, and really invest in their employees in ways they didn't before.
It's not just individual companies changing. We're seeing whole industries transforming because of this.
What do you mean? What kind of industry-wide changes are happening?
Well, think about restaurants. They're having some of the toughest times with this shortage, but they're also coming up with some of the most innovative solutions.
Like what?
They're trying out new ways of serving customers, using automation, even changing their menus to deal with staffing issues. Like some places have switched to QR code ordering and contactless payments. It makes things faster and they need fewer waiters.
I've seen that. It's definitely efficient, but does it, kind of take away from the whole dining experience?
That's what a lot of restaurants are trying to figure out. How do you keep things efficient but still make customers feel welcome? It's a tough balance. Some restaurants are even going all in on ghost kitchens, just doing delivery and takeout, so they don't need any front of house staff at all.
Wow, that's like completely changing how restaurants work.
Exactly. And it's not just restaurants. We're seeing this kind of innovation everywhere.
So the labor shortage is making us rethink how we work and how businesses are run.
Absolutely. And while there are challenges, this is also a chance to create a better future of work, one that's fairer, more sustainable, and more fulfilling.
I like that way of thinking about it. It's not just a problem, it's a chance to rebuild and reimagine things. But even with these good changes, there are still things to be careful about, right? What should we keep in mind as we go forward?
One big concern, as we said, is that inequality could get worse. As more jobs are automated, we got to make sure people who lose their jobs because of technology can get the training and support they need to find new ones.
If we don't, we could end up in a world where only a few people benefit from technology and everyone else gets left behind.
You got it. We also need to think about the ethics of all this automation. How do we make sure it's used responsibly and doesn't just make existing social problems worse?
It sounds like navigating this new world of work is going to take a lot of careful thought, planning, and a commitment to making sure everyone benefits.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, I think we've done a great job diving into this whole labor shortage thing. We talked about the causes, the effects, potential solutions, and even what the future of work might look like.
It's been a really interesting conversation, and hopefully our listeners have a much better grasp on this complicated issue now.
I hope so too. We've covered a ton today, but before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. We talked about what businesses and workers can do, but what about the government? What can they do to address this on a larger scale?
That's a great question. We didn't really get into that, but it's definitely something to think about more.
Could investing in things like infrastructure, education, and affordable housing help ease some of the pressure causing this shortage?
Those are definitely important areas to consider. And we should also look at immigration reform. Could making it easier for skilled workers to come here help fill those critical gaps in the labor market?
These are tough questions with no easy answers, but they're questions we need to think about as a society if we want a better, more equitable future for everyone.
Definitely. The labor shortage isn't just an economic issue. It's a societal issue that needs a multi-pronged approach.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I encourage our listeners to keep thinking about these questions, talk about them with others, and advocate for policies that create a fairer, more sustainable future of work for all.
Well said. Let's keep this conversation going.